Testing. 1, 2. Hey Jenna, welcome to the stream. Is the audio okay? Hey Sasquatch Aquatics, welcome to the stream. I literally have no agenda today. I just woke up. I managed to let myself set up way too late last night, binge watching Stranger Things. What's up with you guys today? Hey Cobweb Cavern, welcome to the stream. Hey Richard Huff, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the man today. I was supposed to go do something for my wife and I overslept this morning, so I don't feel like the man. As soon as I get done here, I gotta get up and go do something. Alright, so I've been calling this random tip stream, but really it's non-random because I've been giving the tips out of this book, 500 Ways to be a Better Freshwater Fish Keeper. And so today it's 175, and I'm just picking these at random. Floating plants add another layer to the tank display. Floating plants add an extra element to a display and are excellent for removing excess nutrients in the water. To keep floating plants successfully, you should make sure that the aquarium receives adequate ventilation above the surface. If you have a closed hood with just a few openings, a small fan can be positioned to create a gentle airflow through the hood. Good floating plants for the aquarium include Salvinia articulata, water lettuce, Pista, Riccia, duckweed, and Limnobium species. That's an interesting tip. Yeah, I am in trouble. Basically, she's out of town, so she needs somebody to teach her Sunday school class, and she got somebody last week, but somehow the information that she was also going to be gone this week didn't make it through, so I need to go talk to the same person that did her Sunday school teaching last week. Ugh. So what's up with you guys on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon? I'm wearing my Flip Aquatics t-shirt. So, I guess we could talk a little bit about floating plants. Jimmy just mentioned the stream. Yeah, I was in there for a second before I started this up. Thanks, Jimmy. Hey, Dank Tags, welcome to the stream, man. Back in the 70s, I was line breeding. Hey, Steve Skoglund, welcome to the stream, man. Am I sick? No sicker than normal. Back in the 70s when I was line breeding Jack Dempsey's, and HC Aqua, welcome to the stream. I was line breeding Jack Dempsey's to, hey Flynn, welcome to the stream, man. I was line breeding Jack Dempsey's, and when I was line breeding Dempsey's, I didn't really recognize it then because I was breeding for density of spangles. Yeah, Flynn, I can't believe you've never eaten fried chicken. Oh my gosh. Hey Candy, welcome to the stream. I was breeding them for density of spangles, and I guess the electric blue is the product of someone else breeding for density of spangles, like I was in a way that I didn't manage to do. But sometimes I would get a pair, they would pair off, and I couldn't really get them to breed. I could get them to pair off, they would fight, they would lip lock, they would go through all the normal sparring that Dempseys go through, and yet they wouldn't breed, and sometimes this would happen when they were smaller, so you can write off some of it to their age, that they weren't just really ready to breed. But usually when a pair forms, they're ready to breed. And sometimes I just could not get them to breed, and I'd try all kinds of different stuff, like water changes, and cooler water changes. And I finally, by mistake, hit on the idea of doing a heavy water change and leaving floating plants on the surface of the water. And I can't even remember what it was. It was probably guppy grass or something like that I ended up knocking loose, and it ended up floating on the surface of the water, and boom, they would breed. So, if you think about it, in nature, fish go through a dry season where the water level decreases, the temperature rises, then they go through a heavy rain season where floods come to the river and plants get knocked out of trees, in the sense of leaves, in the sense of the weaker plants along the banks of the river or the lake end up in the water. And so it kind of makes sense that you would do a heavy water change, and that it would represent flood stage, heavy rains, cooler water, and then plant debris on the surface. So while that tip from the book doesn't actually state any of that, I think that it's a very good breeding tip too, that you allow plants to float at the surface after doing a heavy water change to represent what fish go through in nature. Hey Susan, welcome to the stream. Happy belated Thanksgiving to you and Rod too. Andy Lees, welcome from UK. How's everything going across the pond? I'm glad to have you guys in. Yeah, Turtle Girl, I couldn't believe that Flint's never had fried chicken before. John Williams says, hey Dwayne, hope you and Elaine had a nice Thanksgiving. How's Smokey getting along? Smokey is just... Come here, Smokey. Come here. He is just becoming a serious monster. Say hello to everybody on the live stream, Smokey. Show him what a great guy you are. What a great cat you are. I'm going to give him a close-up. He is, he's kind of feral. You know, he's still kind of feral. I mean, he spent his first 3 or 4 or 5 weeks outside, so he's going to be a piece of work. Yes, you are a piece of work, aren't you? He's missing his mommy. For those that don't know, Elaine has been in Atlanta for the last week, so our Thanksgiving was pretty quiet because I was here and she was there, and none of the kids came, so there really was no Thanksgiving dinner. Our non-adopted stepdaughter had her second child in Atlanta. Her name's Grace, and the boy's name is Emmanuel. She has Isaac and Emmanuel. And Emmanuel, my wife went down there to help her with Emmanuel, taking care of him. I hear your brother scratching at the door. Do you think we ought to let him in? Do you think we ought to let him in? I gotta go let my dogs in. Hang on. So anyway, I just think that little tip about plants on the water. Boy, looks like I've got a quite the flare going on with my camera, and it may be this. That little tip about plants on the surface of the water could be a whole lot more expanded and turn into some really decent information if you follow up on stuff like that. And once again, that tip is coming from 500 Ways to be a better fish keeper. And right, Cobweb Caverns is adding that plants on the top of the water also provide some shade as well. And it does make some fish feel less exposed. You know, a lot of the places in South America that our fish come from, a lot of them have almost no plant life in the rivers themselves. And I'm talking about fish that come from rivers and in some cases lakes as well. You know, very few places actually have a heavy plant growth in watching the Iron Bowl. Hey Jeremy, welcome to the stream, man. The TDS meter got here fine. It's really nice. Hey, David McMeany, welcome to the stream. If you look at underwater video, and believe me, there's a lot of it here on YouTube, and I would highly recommend that anybody get out there and it's a football game, Cobweb Caverns. Andy Lees wants to know, have a red tiger lotus. Can I get a few leaves to float on the surface and still get nice fresh leaves from the base? Andy, my wife is the plant person pretty much in this family. I have a brown thumb, but I think that it will continue to put out leaves, even if some are floating on the surface. I think that's basically how lotuses are. They're like surface floating leaf plants. My wife had one. I haven't seen it in a while. Hey, Chris's Fish Room, welcome to the stream. Anyway, if you get on YouTube and dial up underwater footage of rivers in different parts of the world, and there are a lot of them. Sometimes you have to dig, sometimes you have to know the name of the river itself or the name of the lake. You'll see that there is not a lot of foliage in most rivers or water bodies that are deep or deeper. You get it on the margins of riverbanks. You get it on the margins of lakes where the water's shallow enough for them to. But a true biotope tank of most biotopes in South America and Asia, Africa, would consist of leaf litter from plants that were local to the area, and perhaps some rotting wood, and a lot of mulm, and the water's not usually really clear. In some places it is, but us using so many plants in tanks is not exactly a natural thing, because a lot of times these fish come from areas where there are no plants in the water itself. And a lot of times the only plants that they get are the ones that get knocked into the rivers or knocked into the lakes, by high windstorms or by thunderstorms. And so putting floating plants on the surface right after doing a heavy water change is really a natural thing for the aquarium. And I would highly recommend those of you that haven't tried it to try it. Susan, if you're still in here, did you ever think any more on getting yourself a Jack Dempsey? Yeah, Andy, red lotuses are really cool plants. Like I said, I'm not a very good green thumb. I'm more of a brown thumb. My wife is the one that keeps plants. Dank Tank asks, what's your favorite Repashy, Dwayne? And since a lot of the Repashy that I feed goes to my plecos, my L260s, I like Stephen Tanner's own version of Repashy, which is called Fruit Loops, and it's made for bottom feeders. Soylent Green is great. Really, the honest truth is almost all of them are really good, and I would highly recommend anyone that has not used Repashy to use Repashy. It's, from the outside looking in, it's kind of an expensive food in the sense that you think, oh, I'm just getting that little bottle and it's so much money. But you've got to remember that when you mix Repashy, when you mix Repashy, you're adding 3 times the water to the powder. So you're tripling the volume of what you get. You can use rapashi as a powder food for fry. You just stick your finger in or stick a little something in there and get some on it and tap it into the surface of the water and it will feed fry, very small fry. Yeah, John Williams, it probably would. Susan says, I decided against a Jack Dempsey because I'm not sure about the cichlid care. Still researching and watching videos of people who own them. Well, Susan, you're keeping an angelfish, and an angelfish is a cichlid, so you are already experiencing some of the behaviors that a cichlid will show for you, but a Jack Dempsey is an easy fish to keep in the sense that they will tolerate a lot of parameter variation, in the sense that they'll eat anything that gets near them, although they do prefer things like chopped up earthworms or just earthworms in general. And Susan, the reason I suggested it is because it will open a whole new world to you, in the sense of, a lot of the fish that we keep are kind of, like mindless automatons. They just flash back and forth in the tank, and swim. A Jack Dempsey's like getting a dog, because they not only are aware of the interior of their tank, they're highly aware of the exterior of their tank. I had one pair in a dining room when I lived in Texas, and they would, when they were in the breeding process, they would attack my dogs when they ran through the room. They didn't attack me because they knew I fed them, but they would attack other people that came through. A Jack Dempsey is a thinking, feeling, aware creature, and that's pretty common for most larger cichlids. Okay, David McMeany says, will plecos eat booze? Not really, David. Plecos normally, unless they're really hungry, this cat's name is Smokey, Big E's. He's our newest cat. We've got Lizzie, who is a tiny black Maine Coon cat. And this cat, my wife loves to feed the outside cats, so we've got a lot of feral cats that hang around our house outside. They don't ever come in because our dogs scare them. And this cat had 3 siblings, 2 of which got run over by cars, and 1 of which was killed by a dog. Somebody let their dog run loose, and it killed the kitten. So he was the last remaining survivor of his litter, and my wife and I felt so bad about it, we took him in. He's now a member of our family. And they were, let's see, I named them Tiger, Sparks, Smokey, and I named one Snake because he had kind of the spots in the middle of his stripe. But my wife called him Harry. She didn't like Snake. and he is a piece of work. He has taken to being inside like crazy. He just my little Maine Coon cat, Lizzie, I think she was spent her whole childhood in a pound, and she never learned to socialize with cats. And because of that, I don't think that she ever gained any kind of recognition. Susan says, I don't think I can put JD with the Angels or in a Grommy tank. Wouldn't they need a special only tank? Susan, the way of most fish, now there's always exceptions, and some of the larger cichlids are generally an exception to this rule. The way most fish are is whoever is in the tank before them, whoever was there when they ended up being placed in the tank, is higher on the pecking order than they are. Now, of course, that that takes some. Obviously, if you've got a school of neon tetras in a tank, and you put a Jack Dempsey in there, within a couple of months, you're not going to have any tetras anymore. If the Dempsey is large enough to really eat. But Dempseys can be decent community aquarium members. And angels don't put up with a lot of garbage from anybody. Angels are pretty cranky when they get ready to be. So while many people would probably tell you that eventually that Dempsey is going to need to be isolated in its own tank because it's going to be so large, once it gets up 5-6 inches and starts getting into the breeding stages of its life, it could very well do damage to other fish. And for that much I can recognize it. Grommies are, I don't know if you've noticed it, but many species of Grommy, many individuals of Grommy are really mean. They fin nip, they bully, they hey Vals, welcome to the stream. He asked, Dwayne, what's your thoughts on Texas cichlids? My thoughts on Texas cichlids are that they are in the same area as Jack Dempsey's and green terrors and red terrors. They are, Texas cichlids are meaner than Dempsey's are, and just in general. Oh boy, I got a troll. Yes. Texas cichlids can be vicious. They can be so hard to get along with that yep. Let's see. Since none of the rest of the guys are doing it, I'll do it. Yeah, Susan, Grommies can be really mean. That's one of the reasons that I don't keep Grommies, is that in a community tank, they can be really hard to deal with. Rufus, you want to come up here? Mm-hmm. You want to come up here? You want me to hold you? Hey, Fishman, welcome to the stream. So I had my first experience with a Texas cichlid was it came in as a variant, and I wasn't sure exactly what it was. And valves, I've got a mod wall. Obviously, none of them jumped on that troll, but I do have a lot of mods in here. Texas cichlids, I put a female Jack Dempsey of about 4 inches in with a male Texas cichlid of about 5 inches. And that female stripped that Texas cichlid of all of its skin and scales. That fish barely survived. It was overnight that it happened. You know, I watched them spar with each other, and they did some lip locking, just like Dempseys normally do. And that female descaled that Texas cichlid. By the same token, I've had Texas cichlids kill Dempseys before. So, you know, generally speaking, a Texas cichlid is tougher and meaner than a Jack Dempsey, except that there are certain individuals that aren't. Our fish are just like people in the sense that each fish that you're dealing with is an individual and has its own personality. It has its own goals in the sense of what it will and what it won't do. So you can read all the literature you want. You can listen to me. You can listen to other people talking about the kind of fish that you're going to keep. And you can get an individual that is completely different from anybody else's, and maybe meaner, maybe milder. Fish are individuals, especially when you get into the larger cichlids, especially when you get into the, you know, I'm not going to say higher order, but it seems that way. It seems that way in the sense of the amount of intelligence that they bring to bear and the amount of awareness that they possess. And that's one of the reasons why I've been trying to convince Susan to get a Jack Dempsey, is because I want her to see, you know, we are all individuals and we all have our own choices as to what kind of fish we keep, what it is that we love, you know, and what we're willing to invest in the hobby as to the work involved with keeping, you know, certain fish. But there are some fish that are so intelligent, that show such amazing breeding behavior, activity, that it's like they raise the hobby to a whole other level, and suddenly the behaviors of other types of fish pale in comparison. And I don't know, because my wife wanted them, because Jimmy had a bunch that I got from him when I raided his fish room, because he was moving to work with Corey. Rainbows are new to me in the sense of really keeping them as a, you know, other than just a one-off fish. And rainbows very much evidence to me a lot of the behaviors that I recognize in cichlids. while they are sort of mindless automatons, they also, in their breeding behavior, in their voraciousness to feed, I've been doing a little research and digging into the lineage of rainbows. And it's my guess that way back in history, the lineage of rainbow fish and the lineage of certain cichlids is very closely related. And I have absolutely no proof of that. This is just pure conjecture on my part. But when Gondwana land split up, it's pretty obvious that the lineage line that became rainbows went one way, and the lines that became African, South American, North American, and some European cichlids became split in another direction. And man. Okay. Susan says, my live fish store will take my 9-inch common rhino pleco when I take in some guppies next week. Yeah. And Susan says, if a 55-gallon is enough for Jack Dempsey full grown, I might consider a couple one day. And yes, you can keep a full-grown pair of Jack Dempseys in a 55-gallon tank. The only issue, if you have other community fish in that tank, is when they start to breed. Because if you're lucky enough to end up with a pair, they will corner every other fish in the tank. Even if it's 10 other Jack Dempseys the same size as they are, a pair that sets up a breeding spot in the tank will chase every other fish in the tank to the far corner. And if the fish is stupid enough to keep coming in their area, it potentially will get killed as well. They don't really want to kill fish. They just don't want anything near their spawning site. And spawning behavior in Jack Dempsey's is something that will show you just how much is going on in their heads, that they not only are intelligent, that they are fully blown individuals, and that they go through. Jack Dempsey's, a pair will not form a pair bond unless they are evenly matched. And evenly matched means that the female can't kill the male and that the male can't kill the female. And they both recognize that they are strong enough to withstand the assault of the other, and that they basically battle royale. And they will fin flare, they will circle each other, and finally end up locking lips. Most fish have lips that will, come out, and they will lock lips with each other, and they will swim like crazy while they're locked, because what they're doing is ensuring that the mate that they have chosen is a strong, that they've chosen a good mate, basically, is what it is. And they decide this by how physically strong that mate is. And this goes for females and males alike. They battle to make sure that they have chosen a good prospective mate. And oftentimes the female will kill the male. Oftentimes the male will kill the female. There's no guarantee one way or the other. It's not It's not the size. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog. And that is very much evident in cichlid breeding behavior and in Jack Dempsey breeding behavior. They battle to choose a mate. Now, sometimes you'll have two fish thrown in together and they avoid some of that long behavior, but most of the time, that's how they set up a pair bond. And watching a pair of Jack Dempseys go through courtship and spawning and then caring for those little tiny fish. Hey, Lord Vader, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I've kept a lot of them, Susan, and watched them really closely. So, yeah, I've cut my teeth on line breeding Jack Dempseys. Yeah, John Williams, thanks for stopping by and spending a little bit of your Saturday with us. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend as well. So, Susan, the reason that I'm wearing this point out, and believe me, this is not me trying to browbeat you. This is not me trying to make you do something that you want to do. That's your tanks. You do what you want with the tank. What I'm trying to do is open a doorway for you so that you see, I want to say something stupid like the next level of fish keeping, or the next, I don't know, it's tough for me to articulate exactly what it is that I'm trying to point you towards without it seeming kind of stupid or there is just a whole nother world out there when you start watching some of these higher cichlids and their breeding antics and their breeding behaviors. It's basically like putting a dog in a fish tank. They are that intelligent. They are that smart. They know your face. They will, yeah, another aspect, Val's, that's a pretty good way to point it out. It's just, I've watched Susan over the last year or so grow as a fish keeper. I'm just trying to, I don't know, herd her into another area. And Susan, please don't take this wrong way. I'm not at all interested in forcing you to do anything, as if I could force you to do anything. I'm just, you get a little group of Jack Dempseys, and Rod will start taking over your fish keeping because they are that. It'd be like getting Rod 3 bulldogs because they are that intelligent. They will watch you. They know when you're going for the food. They know where you will feed. Yes, Susan, that's it exactly. And I, I'm not interested in shoving or pushing. I'm just trying to pique your interest to get you to go that way. You can get African cichlids. African cichlids will show you. Yeah, there you go. Jeremy's talking about Severums. Okay, Jeremy, would you recommend Severums to Susan, or would you recommend Jack Dempsey's to Susan? You followed Susan. You know her skill level in aquaculture. do you think that Severums are a little less lenient on water parameters? They're a little more demanding in their water quality needs. You know, I have kept Severums before, but I have never actually gotten Severums to breed for me before. I don't think I ever got a pair formed. Would you say that their behavior is more than Jack Dempsey's, or would you say that their behavior is less than Jack Dempsey's in the sense do Severums do a mating dance, you know, fight with each other? Well, thank you, Susan, and I respect and help and appreciate you as well, and that's why I'm saying these things to you. Hey, Joel, Glass Boxes, welcome to the stream, man. I'm trying to engage Jeremy on Severum, talking to you, Susan, about Severums, because Severums are very much in the same general area as Jack Dempsey's are. My experience of Severums was that their attitudes and their way of behaving is a little more like angelfish than like Dempsey's. I didn't get quite the same sense of pugnaciousness from Severums that I did from Dempsey's. I mean, I know that a Severum will stand its ground, and it's by no means a weak fish of any sense, but I just didn't get the same animosity out of Severums that I got out of Jack Dempsey's. But I had a whole lot more experience with Jack Dempsey's than I did with Severums. Yeah, Severums would be a great fish to keep if you preferred them to Dempsey's, just in a personal preference sort of way, Susan. But I think a Jack Dempsey would be much less demanding. A Jack Dempsey's going to eat whatever hits the water, including your new dither fish, When a Jack Dempsey, if it'll fit in a Jack Dempsey's mouth and you add new fish to the aquarium, you better pull that Jack Dempsey out of the tank and rearrange the decor, add your new fish, and then put the Jack Dempsey back in the tank, because he'll feel like he's in a brand new tank. He's somehow been magically transported to some new place, and that all these fish were there before him, so that he better watch them a while to decide whether they are a danger to him or what they represent exactly before deciding to go ahead and eat them. And that's kind of how I had, back in the day, we didn't understand the dangers of feeding feeder goldfish to our fish. In fact, feeder goldfish were one of the better choices you could make as far as live food. Some people are squeamish about it. Some people are, against the idea of feeding one thing to another. But I'm telling you from experience that that's what goes on in the wild. These fish that are smaller are food for the larger fish on the chain. Now, back in the day, they mistreated feeder goldfish. They didn't feed them a lot. They kept them in close quarters. But those fish back then, when I'm talking the 70s and 80s, those feeder fish that we were getting back then were in much better shape than the feeder fish that you would go buy today. Because today they have learned how to literally pack the fish in as many as possible in a tank with the fewest losses, and they have all kinds of diseases, all kinds of parasites, all kinds of stuff that is just going to kill the fish that you're feeding it to. So, yeah, Cobweb Cavern says, if it moves, it's food, and I breed guppies, and you can't stop them eating some of their own fry. It's totally natural. Yeah. Yeah, it's the way of fish. But I think the way of fish gets magnified more brilliantly in the higher order cichlids. They express, I mean, go look at some aquarium or some breeders that has like a 16 or a 17-inch doveye in one of their tanks. If you spend any amount of time watching that fish at all, you will begin to understand how closely he is observing you. You will begin to understand how intensely he is engaged in the area inside of his tank and the area outside of his tank. Everything that he can see, everything that he can touch, he's going to either control it, kill it, or know that he doesn't and isn't able to kill it. You know, those fish are insanely intelligent. That's like getting a Newfoundland puppy and letting it grow up. And I've always wanted to have a pair of doveye, but the truth with doveye is that they will go into the high 20 inches and can get as tall as 16 or 17 inches. And to really keep a fish that large, you need 500 or 600 or 700 or 800 gallons. Like if Corey were to put like a group of doveye in that 800-gallon tank, eventually it would either narrow down to a pair or probably only 2 or 3 would survive. Anyway, I was talking about feeder goldfish. I have had, I would feed Sergeant Tank says, I have 3 F0. F0 meaning from the wild. They were born in the wild. Wild-caught males. In the future, once I obtain the F0 female, I will breed. Then I can ensure the genetics are more pure than those who are jacking up the genetic lines. Anyway, I would go to my local pet store, maybe once a month, and I would I'd buy like a bag of feeder goldfish and scatter. I probably had 900, 1,000 gallons of water in my house. I was, of course, single. I had no real wife. I took care of my fish. And that's not entirely true, but I didn't have anyone else whose desires and interests I had to engage in, and so my whole house was full of fish tanks, from 150 down to dozens of tins. And I would scatter that bag of feeder live goldfish into different tanks where larger pairs were. I have had a feeder goldfish not only survive, but thrive and grow up in a tank full of Jack Dempsey's. If a fish survives them trying to eat it when it first gets in there, and it continues to grow, Jack Dempsey will accept it as a valid member of the local area as long as it behaves in the sense of when they're breeding, it stays out of their way, as long as it doesn't present itself as a stupid meal. Jack Dempsey will let a feeder goldfish grow up to be 4, 5, 6 inches long, until it reaches a stage where you literally have to take it out of the tank. I've taken several fish like that back to my live fish store because my fish weren't going to eat them. Glass boxes, that's Joel from New Zealand, says, "Lol, sounds like my life. No wife and 1,000 kids." Yeah. Well, I think, Joel, the honest truth is that we're better off married. The science proves that married men last longer than single men do. I know that it's much more fulfilling, much more I don't know, your life seems more complete when you're married. But when you're single, it is really nice. Hey, Danny's Aquarium, welcome to the stream. When you're single, it's really nice to be able to do what the hell you want, and not have to worry about what your other half wants to have happen in the house. So when you're single, take advantage of that. Not to the point that it keeps you single, that you never get married because of it, but take advantage of the fact that you can do as you please when you're single. Susan says, "I think I try to keep fish that are peaceful because when I've had issues in a tank, it kind of stresses me. But maybe one day I'll venture out into the next level of the hopeful to move up." Yeah, I understand that completely, Susan. But even gouramis and angelfish, some of the meanest fish I've ever owned were angelfish. They are just downright nasty sometimes. And of course it's the individual. But in my experience, Dempseys are not mean like that, mean-spirited. Dempseys are just what they are. They're going to eat anybody that they can eat. All right, guys, we're wrapping up the hour, and I have got to go speak to my wife's potential Sunday school teacher replacement. She's going to kill me if she doesn't find somebody to replace her for Sunday school teaching. She went down to Atlanta to take care of Grace's newborn and her younger son while Grace recovers from her C-section. And she had to get a replacement for 2 weeks, and she got a replacement for 1 week for her Sunday school class. So I'm gonna head out, guys, and try to keep my better half from scalping me when she gets home. You guys have a good Saturday and the rest of the weekend. Thanks for spending some of your time with me on Saturday, and good luck, YouTube.